One of the problems with recruiting for investment banking is not the knowledge or skills you acquire, but the access to talk with real investment bankers to put your best foot forward. Our sponsor, WSO Academy, can provide those connections with 60 head mentors who are finance professionals at top firms like Goldman, Centerview, and JP Morgan. Imagine being able to get on the phone within 24 hours with one of the Academy's 1,300 mentors right before a critical interview. Get on the waitlist for WSO Academy today by clicking the link in the show notes or by visiting wallstreetoasis.com/academy. All right. Welcome to Investment Banking Insights. This is the only show dedicated to helping you learn both the technical and non-technical aspects of investment banking. My name is Alex Mason, and I am your host. Thank you so much for listening to me. I appreciate you joining me today, learning about investment banking, and I have an accounting midterm in less than 90 minutes. So I better be on point with the accounting, right? So I figured, hey, might as well use this time to record an episode of the podcast, focus on accounting, right? You see, it's kind of works out like that sometimes. So I hope you have an incredible day. We're talking about advanced accounting concepts right now. And today's question is this: walk me through the major items for shareholders' equity. Walk me through the major items for shareholders' equity. We know from the basic accounting equation, we have assets equals liabilities plus equity. But what's actually part of that equity component? Well, we talked about a couple of these components in previous episodes of the show, but we're going to take a little bit of a deeper dive into some of the more nuanced aspects of it right now. But let's start with the basics. First of all, you have the original paid-in capital, or the common stock of the corporation. This is the most fundamental form of equity that a company has. When a business gets created, the owners contribute some initial capital, which creates the stock. And that's what's known as par value of however much issued stock was created. So if you and a friend decide to start a company, you each kick in $1,000 and you create 2,000 shares of stock with those $2,000. Each of those shares of stock has a par value of $1, and that's your common stock. So that's your most basic component of the shareholders' equity. The next component is what's known as additional paid-in capital. So we have kind of your regular contributed paid-in capital, your common stock, and then you have your additional paid-in capital. And this is just what it sounds like. It's if someone invests extra money into equity of the company. And you'll see this when companies have follow-on offerings for shares of stock. They may issue additional shares of equity to institutions or to the public. And that's just another way that they can create more money. And then this could also be the issuance of stock for employees. So stock-based compensation is also included here. Okay, so that's the second piece of shareholders' equity. The third piece that you can have is another big component of equity called retained earnings. We talked about retained earnings a good amount in the basic accounting questions section of this podcast, but just touching on it again, when a company makes a profit and has a positive net income, that amount gets added to retained earnings. And retained earnings is a permanent account, so it gets carried over year after year. So if a company has cumulative profits over time, retained earnings is going to increase. But if a company reports a net loss for a year, let's say on the income statement, they actually lose money and net income is negative, then that amount gets subtracted from retained earnings. So that part of the equity portion of the balance sheet takes a hit. So companies can have positive retained earnings or actually negative shareholders' equity if there's a lot of losses. Now that's the third component. Next is something called treasury stock. Treasury stock. This is stock that the company itself has purchased, and not stock in other corporations, but stock of that company. So this is the result of stock buybacks. You'll hear this in the news often. So-and-so company announces $10 billion of stock buybacks. Well, that's what's going on there. The company is going into the stock market, buying back shares of its own stock. And so that stock is now considered treasury stock on the equity component of the balance sheet for the corporation. So those shares just basically get taken out of the market and are owned by the company itself. And then lastly, we have this other little category, which is a little bit more vague. It's called accumulated other comprehensive income. Accumulated other comprehensive income. And this is kind of the catch all. It's the miscellaneous section that includes other items that affect shareholders' equity. And one example of that is if you're dealing with currency exchange effects that somehow affect the equity, due to the rates between the currencies of different countries, you might see some sort of record of that here. I don't understand this section fully myself yet. I think it's a little bit more nuanced, but just know that this other section exists. So just to recap what these are, you got your common stock, you've got your additional paid in capital, you've got your retained earnings, treasury stock, and then accumulated other comprehensive income. So you have all these different components, these 5 components, and depending on how simple or clean the balance sheet of the company is, you might not see all of these, but you'll definitely see retained earnings, you'll definitely see your common stock for sure. But those are the components of shareholders' equity. And yeah, that's what I got for you today here on Investment Banking Insights. Hope you're doing amazing. Hope you're having an incredible day. Thank you for listening. Shout out to all of my fellow Cornell folks listening to the show, going through this recruiting process. I know it's getting crazy right now, but keep your head up. We're going to get through this, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.